Okay, objectives and expectations. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to COOs in Transition, getting on your way to your next great opportunity. These are the objectives and expectations of the meeting today. COO Executives in Transition is designed to support chief operating officers in these uncertain and challenging business times. We're open to COO Forum members as well as any chief operating officer or second in command executive pro bono with absolutely no fees or obligations. This initiative aligns with the Chief Operating Officer Business Forum Inc. COO Forum core values and is expressly intended for all chief operating officers and second in command executives. We are in our 7th month and we are continuing this program and looking always to add more things to it. And we have a wonderful session today. In terms of guidelines, just a few things. Meeting courtesy. Let's have everybody mute until you're ready to answer a question or so forth. But it just keeps everything quiet. Business first. This is casual, relaxed. Run and get a cup of coffee. Do what you need to do. That's the way we kind of look at it. So, business language and no politics. That just works better. This meeting is recorded and we put it in the Mighty Networks for later reference, as we have with all of our activities here. And just keep your job prospects confidential. Yeah, there's no reason to share a lot of things and get poached. And poaching is the world's one of the things that I have seen most that we don't want to ever see in our COO forum. I also am honored to introduce two of the people that really make this thing go. First off, Laura Weichel is the COO Forum second in command for 13 years and our executive vice president. She's based in Atlanta and she heads up the Chief Operating Officer Business Forum, COO Forum organization leadership over all chapters, chapter directors, and members. She is a phenomenal, upbeat, and visionary colleague. And we're all blessed to have her in the COO Forum. Fiona Murray is new to the COO Forum and is at the point on a lot of activities in COO Executives in Transition. So we really appreciate all the great things Fiona is doing. She recently moved and she has she's now in another state, and that's great stuff too. That's the versatility of being in a Zoom world. With that, I'm going to throw it to Laura.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bill. I am very excited today because I am welcoming Laura Goodrich to our program today. And we've had the wonderful opportunity at the COO Forum to have Laura join us at one of our roundtable meetings. And she further extended herself to join us today and share on her topic, creating a positive mindset. A little background on Laura. She is an expert in transformation and the future of work. She has over 20 years experience as an executive coach and is recognized by Thinkers 360 as the top 20 thought leaders in transformation, future of work, change, culture, and technology. Her global perspectives on workforce dynamics and change have earned her the reputation as someone who can create positive outcomes and even the most challenging workplace dynamics. Oops, I just lost my word. Hold on just a second. She has authored, hosted, and produced over 10 hybrid coaching programs on transformation and change. And she's also the award-winning author and producer of the book, Seeing Red Cars, Driving Yourself, Your Team, and Your Organization to a Positive Future. And there's a great 2-minute clip that is pretty cool that she has on Amazon if you want to see a little bit about that book. It's interesting. But with that, I would love to introduce Laura, turn it over to her, and let you take on your topic with the group.
Right, fantastic. Thank you so much, Laura and Bill and Fiona, and welcome everyone. I'm excited about our conversation and our discussion today. I'd love to invite you to engage in it, to really step up and, put notes in chat, ask me questions, share things with your colleagues. This is a unique opportunity for us to really gather from one another. So let's step into that space. I'm going to ask you, and we'll do a few polls, we'll do some quick breakouts, and I hope really set the dynamic so that we connect here and we connect outside of this conversation. It's very critical going forward. But you made it here, and that's the best and most important part. It's interesting when I prepare for these sessions, how stories come before me that seem so appropriate. And that was the case as I was thinking about you and preparing for our time together. I had a session with a leader who 1 year ago was at the top of her game. Everything was going well. In fact, she had won a 2-week all-expense trip to Fiji. She had a great relationship with the leader that she was working with, and she was ready for that trip right before everything locked down. And of course, the trip went away, and the dynamics in the organization that she worked with changed in very, very big ways. There was an acquisition. That leader that she worked with went away. She had another leader. The relationship became uncomfortable quickly, contentious after a period of time. And very recently, she had her review, and that leader said to her, I think you should choose another area to work, because I think you're ill-suited for this role. And as she told me this story, she said never in her life, 20 years, she had a history of such a positive experience. She was rewarded so highly for it just 1 year ago. And all of a sudden she finds herself in this place where things are different. And she looked me in the eye and she said, Laura, what do you talk to people about in this moment? And that's when I shared with her the story that I understand is true, is that if a barn is burning and you need to remove the horses from the barn, you need to put a blinder across their eyes, because if they break loose, they will go right back into that burning barn. And that is something that I've seen in my work and working with leaders, particularly when the departure or the change is something that leaves them with feelings of negative feelings and hurt feelings, truthfully, that to be very careful that we identify opportunities that are right. And so it was a perfect conversation for today, because creating a positive mindset is really about creating conviction, operating with confidence, and making sure that you're driving intentional actions. And it's never been more important if you're coming out of a situation that is not the way that you wanted it to be, or is currently not the way you want it to be. In that example, that particular leader is not in transition just yet, but I will assure you she is in the wind. And she, in fact, has 7 interviews this week. So that may be your story in one way or another. But what we're going to do in our time together today is we are going to be really looking at how do you make sure you've got the right mindset for the leadership organizations that you're working with. Now my slides aren't advancing as I want them to. Stand by. Not the leadership that you're talking with, culture of the organization, and then ultimately in the end, we're going to be talking about you. So what makes this conversation important to me? As Laura mentioned, I've been focusing on transformation in the future of work since 1994. In 1994, I read an article that was called On the Edge of the Digital Age. It described technology as we see it today, and it described the year 2020 and the fact that in the year 2020 that we would be experiencing revolutionary change. It's interesting that that was the year that was chosen. In that time, I knew that this is where I wanted to focus. And so the first thing that I began doing was researching emerging technologies, global connectedness, demographic shifts, and changing consumer and and employee expectations. And throughout that time, the question we always asked, and in working with other colleagues, was what would create the tipping point to this revolutionary change that was described in that article so long ago? And we wondered, would it be AI? Would it be IoT? Might it be 5G? Would it be robotics? Or could it be autonomous technology? We don't know. And while we knew there was a possibility of a pandemic, I think none of us really knew how significant this time would be. But many believe that the pandemic, which moved into this place where we're all working remotely, were smaller tipping points to something much bigger. And we are aligned with Deloitte and so many others in believing that we are in the midst of an explosively fast business transformation, and few industries will be exempt. That's what makes this moment in time so critical for you. And we'll look back, if we were to gather 5 years from now, and I think we will see, we will have led, we will have participated and contributed to something that is in many ways difficult to imagine. So in that time, I researched and I focused on all of those drivers of change. And then I had the privilege of working as a coach and advisor to leaders that were charged with leading change. Why is this so important in our conversation? Because more than anything, I was a keen observer of human behavior, and that's what we'll focus on and talk about in our time together. So I'll be your guide in our short time. When I was graduating from college, the CEO of a company addressed our graduating class and said, "Don't listen to what they're saying about computers. There will always be these on the desks of all office people." And, you know, one of the things that we've found in our research and our work, that it's very common that we become tethered to what we know, and that we look at other things, new things, and innovation disparagingly. For instance, when the automobile was moving into the marketplace, you can see some very loud voices had lots of things to say about the fact that the automobile would not have a future and really wasn't going to be meaningful in the world. And now we have to begin to consider all of the businesses that were born out of the automobile. And we can go back even closer in time, 2007 with the iPhone, big voices out there saying that there's really no future of the iPhone. It doesn't have the magic of the iPad. So we see this being tethered to what we know is very common. In fact, I spoke with a CEO recently, and the CEO said, as soon as the vaccines are widespread, we'll just be back to business as usual. It'll just be like a little blip in the road. And we believe, in absolutely no uncertain terms, that there must be more than business as usual. This is not just any normal place and time. In our work, the question always comes down to, is it what causes people to really rock up on their toes and actually consider changing in really important ways? And unfortunately, we've come to recognize that there has to be a certain amount, or more typically is a certain amount of suffering that comes into play that will cause people to be open to change and new ways of doing things. And that is for sure what we're seeing today. I really want to introduce and create awareness and understanding around being cognizant of the organizations that you're working with, and leaning towards those organizations that see this crisis and this disruption as an opportunity to transform and innovate, and that you may play and contribute to that process. I hope that you are one of them. Now, in our work, we always look forward. We're peeking at those emerging technologies, trying to understand them. That's a big part of what we do. But we also look backwards, and we've come to recognize that these times of transformation have a lot of opportunity, but you have to see them ultimately have a lot of opportunity. And I believe that there will be a lot more opportunity for you going forward than what you're experiencing right now, perhaps. Okay, so what is getting in the way? Now let's begin to look through the lens of your experience, your work experience in terms of leadership and the organizations you've worked with. What gets in the way, or what got in the way with those organizations, or may be getting in the way of the organizations that you're in dialogue and conversation with? Established leaders at all levels have a tendency, just like in the examples I shared, to be very vested to what has been and what they've created for good reason. There's a great deal of pride in what they've created, but also so vested in it that it's difficult to see how things are changing and where they're changing. So begin thinking about where you've come from and the conversations that you're having with organizations. Is this at play with those organizations? What else is getting in the way? Well, here is the part that has been very, very present in the work that we do, is upwards of 70% of our thoughts are unconsciously focused on what we're trying to avoid. This is paralyzing organizations. If you look at what we've experienced in the last year, so much uncertainty. In our experience, when there is uncertainty, this number is elevated further. From the standpoint of the first story I shared, in particular, is extremely present. If you've stepped out of a situation, if you've been a part of something that did not end in the way that you wanted to, this unconscious focus is likely very present, and it will require an intentional work for you. We'll talk more about that. But the unconscious focus of fear and what we're trying to avoid has never been bigger. And we're hearing countless stories of organizations attempting to make really small changes. And in those small changes, they're seeing resistance unlike anything they've seen before. So here we are in this place where there's been so much uncertainty, and this unconscious focus really has become the target. This unconscious focus on what we're trying to avoid has been the target. And then there's the current mindset. So the current mindset of organizations, which really boils down to the assumptions held by that organization. And because they're deeply ingrained over the course of time, there is a lot of incentive to hold on to them, even when things are not working, even when the assumptions are absolutely providing or creating the outcomes that they once did. So and this really comes down to this legacy thinking. This is how we've done it. This is how we've created the outcomes that we've wanted. And this is an interesting piece because we see this so much where people will come to us and say, well, we're struggling with finding this or creating this. And we'll ask them what they're doing, and they'll describe that they're doing the same thing and getting the results. And it shows us how tethered we become with those. So now as you reflect on your last role, or perhaps the ones that you're considering, which of these unconscious obstacles do you think may be at play and is important for you to really be thinking about? Is it resistance to anything new? Is it unconscious focus? I'll launch a poll here. I invite you to join in on the poll. When you reflect on your past experiences, resistance to anything different by established employees, is that at play, or was that at play, or may you have contributed to that? Or is that unconscious focus on what we're trying to avoid really front and center? Or is it that current mindset? All right. So looks like it's even Steven with a lot of these things. Let me see if I can launch that. Did you see those results? Sue, I think that's my friend Sue, unless there's another Sue. Is that right? Excellent. Okay, so the current mindset was the highest, 57%. So bear this in mind as we move forward. I'm going to give you a chance to have a conversation with one or two people in the room. So I'll ask Laura to go ahead and launch the breakout rooms. What I'd like for you to talk about is at which of these unconscious obstacles has been at play, and really be looking at what can I do personally about these as I move forward in my pursuit of what's next. So I'll let you go ahead and launch that, Laura, if you will.
Sure, I'm gonna send everybody in. It's only 3 minutes, so you'll get maybe a 15-second warning. You can stay to the end. So I'll get it open. There's 2 or 3 of you in each room.
Off you go.
Laura, if you wanted to go to room, you can. I'm not going to go.
Well, hi, Charlie. I didn't see you on today. Good to see you.
Everybody should be back, Laura.
Laura, that would be good. All right, so are you seeing my screen, team? No screen. Back we go to that. I always hope that we end up in the right place, right? Okay, tell me what you see.
We've got it. You're good.
Okay, good. Okay, excellent. I hope that you gained some insight, either how you wanted to focus in terms of mindset for the organization, the leadership, or personally in terms of these unconscious obstacles. Unconscious, like all things, if we don't bring it forth and create awareness around it, then we're not able to address it and be conscious with it. So that's key. So now as we really consider what we've been through in the last year, we have to recognize that habits are now becoming deeply ingrained. And I think we've all heard the notion that it takes 21 days to create a habit. If you are anything like the rest of us in the world, we know that we can sort of maybe kind of get a habit going at 21 days, but it takes more for it to become much more ingrained. But we've got 21 days plus 21 days plus 21 days. There are so many factors that are involved now in terms of time. So what does that mean in this process of mindset? I hope it means awareness. I hope it means that you begin to really think about, how can I play a role in fundamentally redefining work as it will emerge as we move out of the crisis, and see this as an opportunity to shift the conversation from one that's based on fear and adversity to one that is truly based on hope and opportunity and being able to contribute to something and innovation and creativity unlike any other place and time. That shift in focus is really an imperative and critical for your role and success going forward. So we looked at those unconscious obstacles. Now let us talk about some intentional actions to consider and think about and begin moving on. So I mentioned to you that once I read that article on the edge of the digital age, I began researching the drivers of change. We call this research high beams on research. So imagine you're in your car and you have your high beams on. Recognize that you can see so much more with your high beams on. This is an integral part of all of the processes that we create. All of the programs that we create always include high beams on research. So here's an example of high beams on. I did a session with an organization and I talked about this, and I went back to the leadership and I said, would you consider really implementing this research more fully? And they said, no, thanks very much. But there was an IT leader in the group and said, you know what, I'm gonna take the wheel, if you will. And this particular organization had, it happened to have been in a part of the country that had a hard time drawing people from other parts of the country. And one of the things that they did to enhance that employee experience was they gave people the chance to connect with others with similar interests to them. This particular leader in IT was a member of a craft beer group. And it was, there were a lot of members. So he went to the group and said, how about if we begin doing high beams on research together, and then we come together over an IPA or what have you, and we talk about what we're learning so that we can really stay on top of all these changes going on in the world. And he had 100 people volunteer. So they asked questions, what will the focus be? And they got all kinds of ideas and they narrowed that down and they identified 12 focus questions or areas of research that they would do, and they would come together on a monthly basis. And they all found that it was very helpful in their understanding of technology. We know that it's critical. We also know that it's very difficult to get organizations and leaderships to commit to it. But those that really engage in this research benefit in huge ways. If we're doing research and paying close attention to AI or autonomous technology, rather than sort of dismissing it, but if we're researching it and understanding it, when we encounter it or consider it with the organizations that we lead, it plays a very, very vital role in our willingness and openness to accept it. So the first step in the process to help really create that positive mindset is to make sure that you are actively involved, actively engaged in this type of research. So I'm going to take a peek over at notes, and what I'd like to ask you to do is to go ahead and type in some of the ideas that you have for your research. What are the things, what are the places that you go? What are the things that you do that are excellent sources for doing research? I'll let you jump in there and share what they are. And then while I wait for you to go ahead and type in, I want to share a story of a leader in a high-tech organization who took this exercise. She started her day every day with 15 minutes of research. She created or curated 3 lists on Twitter that enabled her to very fluidly research things. And I see that, Sienna, you've noted Forbes, Deloitte, and Gartner, which I think is fantastic. And in one of those groups that Heather created, she included those big research organizations. So one of the groups was competition. One of the groups brought in the big research organizations. Excellent. The COO forum, that's fantastic. Networking on LinkedIn, also great. I'll tell you, I've asked this question for many, many years. And, surprisingly enough, I would have people say, okay, well, I just do a Google search or something, which I'm really grateful that I'm seeing much more refined methods. I think that is critical. So begin thinking about how can I engage in regular research of these drivers of change to ensure that I am aware of them. They are creating and driving change unlike anything else in any other place and time. So here's why I leave you with a question: is that what if you had a very disciplined approach to research and to reaching out to others from other industries? This is critical at this point where we find that we are leaning within our industries and our organizations for our collaborative conversations. And many times the ideas and the answers to the challenges that we're facing or will face are going to come outside of their industry. This is why I love a group like this so much. It is so critical to be gathering with people from other industries and to truly have a disciplined approach. So step number one is to have a disciplined approach and a method that makes it simple and easy. I also wanted to mention a couple of podcasts that I think are really important. And unfortunately, it's honest that I can't share it, but I'm going to tell you. Exponential View with a Harvard Business Review, Futures in Focus with Michael Gale, that's a Forbes. Those are two really fantastic technology-oriented podcasts, and a great way to really make sure that you do have your high beams on and you're cognizant and aware of the changes that are going on. And we'll get those links to you. So everybody, I'll make sure that they are included in the PDF of the session. All right. Next. The next intentional action is it relates back to that unconscious focus on what we fear. And that really comes down to this point, and something that I have used in my work for years and years and years. And that's that you get more of whatever it is that you focus on. So you can see that unconscious focus that I alluded to in earlier really gets in the way of our having incredible clarity about the outcomes that we do want. And this is critical for you, such as in the example that I shared. If you're in a situation that is uncomfortable and that you don't like, this is even more prevalent, and it requires that intentional focus on the specific outcome that you want. Knowing the outcomes that you want will then put you in a place where you can make sure that your thoughts, your actions, and your behaviors are aligned with it. It really does come down to that clarity piece. In my work, when I begin working with individuals, particularly if they're in a place of transformation or change or transition, and I ask them what they want, they tell me with incredible detail everything that they don't want. And when I tease that out with questions, it is very clear that that's where they're dwelling in their mind. So developing an intentional focus on the outcomes you want, clearly want, not what you're trying to avoid, the positive outcomes. And here's where it gets tricky, because sometimes people will say, I know what I want. I want to not work for the kind of person that I worked with last time. So you see how tricky that is. That's not a positive outcome. You want to work with someone that will see your strengths, leverage your strengths, and really work collaboratively. Now, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I want you to come up with your own words. I just want you to be careful of that unconscious focus on what you don't want, and make sure that you have an intentional focus on the outcomes that you do want. All right, what other actions? Let's look at these three. High beams on research, researching, being very intentional in your research so that you can engage in very knowledgeable conversation, but you're also able to ask sophisticated questions to determine, is this organization forward leaning? Are they aware of these things, and where are they in their journey of technology adoption and digital transformation? The next intentional action is intentional focus, developing that focus and that clarity on the outcomes that you want, and the discipline to make sure that your thoughts, actions, and behaviors are aligned with it. And then ultimately, it may be about action. What's most important for you? So where to start? Let's once again break into small groups. Laura, if you could give me a helping hand with this, let's have a conversation of where to start and where to really place your focus.
Sure. Only question I have, Laura, how long, you know your presentation best, how much time do you want this group to be?
Let's go for a little bit longer. We can for sure go for 5 to 7 minutes on this.
Okay, I'll go for 6, and we'll force
Okay.
you back in, but I'll go for the middle.
Okay, sounds great.
Okay, get ready for it.
And sort of just, sort of chime in. What did you gather from that little conversation that you think is important, that wasn't there? A new idea, a new thought, something that will help you really make sure that you're being intentional and you're taking actions that will help you positive mindset. Go ahead and jump on chat and sort of just chime in with that. And then I'm going to work on getting screen share. I feel like I've got 4 screens going. So it's like a dog and pony show I've got going on here. All right. Okay. Now, here's the question. Are you ready to contribute to what is next? Are you ready to play a role in leading through a time of absolute transformation? And here's what I'm really interested in is that in the example that I shared with you of a conversation with a senior leader that said, once we get this vaccination widespread, we will go back to business as usual. And we do not believe that that is the case. We believe that as I mentioned, we're in an explosively fast business transformation. And there are organizations that see this as a time for opportunity. And so the question that I have for you, and I'd really like to engage with, is what are you going to do with this information? And what role will it play in how you pursue what's next? Do you want to be a part of an organization that is more forward leaning? And what do you do if you're in one that isn't, or you have 3 interviews this week and you're not quite sure with it? So what do you do with that? Let's jump in. I mean, if anybody, it would be willing to come off of mute and engage in this conversation, is that how do you use this information? Do you use it in your pursuit to make sure that you're finding organizations that are more forward leaning? Do you use it in your pursuit to affect those that are less so? What does this mean to you in your thoughts of what is next?
Sure, this is Terry. I will share an experience that I had yesterday and last week to compare. In doing interviews, in my questions to the team, I asked, how do you celebrate success and recognize failure? And one company said, we don't have time for failure. And the other one said, we appreciate innovation, and we recognize that there's going to be failure when we're innovative, and we need to learn if there is a no or what didn't work too. And I just thought, oh my gosh, I can't work for the company that said we don't have time for failure. So it really opened my eyes with that answer.
Terry, that is such a great example. And that you can see through those 2 examples and how nice for you to have a compare and contrast, right? Where you were able to, because that's the question. And I don't come forth with, with all the answers to these, but that's a perfect example. You now have a question that you can ask and you're able to suss out, are they innovative? And we all know that if you're going to celebrate innovation, you're going to have failure. It's an inherent part of it. So fantastic example. Who else would come off of mute and chat about how you discern those organizations that are more forward leaning, where you can contribute to what is next and play a role in that, and that they do have a future?
Hey, this is Josh. I just wanted to throw something out there regarding this. So, in my opinion, 2020, the pandemic that we're all kind of knee deep in, has provided the perfect interview question, both from a candidate and from a company perspective. And that just is, what is your 2020 story? What is your COVID story? Because that, if you ask a company that while you're in an interview process, that will tell you, did they take the opportunity to pivot? Did they leverage what they were already good at? How are they looking to embrace the change that was forced on them? And then, looking at it the other way, asking a potential employee that same question, that will tell you, are they have a positive mindset or a negative mindset? Do they focus straight on, hey, I took this opportunity to learn, I took this opportunity to spend time with my family? Or do they go straight to, I miss restaurants and I miss this, I miss that? It's an easy question to ask that will give you a ton of insight either way. So that's just something I wanted to throw out there.
I think that's fantastic. I think that's a great example. And I like that you're bringing it into both the interviewing as well as employee conversations, because these are the next questions after you find an organization that is more forward leaning, that is, sees this as an opportunity to innovate, and you to contribute to that innovation. Then the next role you're going to be in is bringing in those new employees. And we have every reason to believe that that there will be an opportunity for a lot of new employees being brought in as the marketplace really moves into the fast lane on this this summer and fall. So great example. Thank you, Josh. One more. Let's hear one more idea of how do we ensure that we're asking the questions and showing our own willingness to learn, to innovate, and that we have the mindset that will contribute. Because, and by the way, that word contribution is really key. So if you have the opportunity to use it, it is key, because none of the big changes can happen alone. So they need contribution. It's a really important piece. Who else would jump on for a last share here before we gather any questions that you have?
Or I would just say, leading with curiosity, leading with your ears, remaining open to the art of the possible, as opposed to always driving with a solution in your hand and reaching out with that solution. Assuming positive intent and communication and thinking and forcing people to think collectively are all things I found pretty helpful.
Isn't that an important piece? And it's a little counterintuitive, because when we're positioning for a role, we feel like we want to showcase what we have and what we can bring. And that often is our experience. And yet at this place in time, it is so critical to show that, deep exploration of challenges is key, rather than sort of coming up with that knee-jerk reaction that, well, this worked before and this is what my experience has brought me. I think that's a really key piece. Let me ask you, John, with that, how do you demonstrate both in an interviewing setting, an expertise and a curiosity, as you note?
One of the things, the expressions I've used in interviews is hurry slowly or slow down to speed up. And it gets people to stop, first of all, and think about what I just said. But then they go, yeah, of course, that's what we're trying to do, is innovate quickly enough so that failure happens on a rapid cycle. And I think by having that conversation, instills a sense that you're leaning forward in the foxhole and not waiting to react. You're proactive.
Right. Right. I think it's great. And I think that, thank you for sharing that. And to the rest of the group, I think it's, let articulate those things. Here's what I'm trying to do is to, I'm not going to get the exact languaging, but slow down before you speed up or whatever you said, to come from a place of curiosity. I have experience and I'm, more than willing to leverage that experience, but I want to make sure that I'm examining challenges with an open mind and a curious mind. So that, that's really a key piece. Thank you for that. That's fantastic. All right. So we're coming close to the end. We could field one last question before we close. I'm going to ask you to go ahead and, type in the notes. What's the biggest takeaway that you're gathering from our time and the actions that you're going to take? And just sort of solidify that in your mind. But if anybody wants to jump off of mute and ask a question before we wrap things up, more than willing to take a quick question before we go. Anyone? I'm trying to get you all so I can see you here. Quick comment or question. Sienna or Janice or Jake or Charlie, Glennis.
Okay, Jake Spano, I will jump in. I will just say I'm a very sort of practical, I view these things from a very practical standpoint. So I am always looking for and seeking ways to stay focused on what I want to go to, not what I'm leaving. And I've had a couple of conversations with folks in the breakout rooms about this. And so, for me, I think it is trying to come to better clarity about where it is exactly that I want to go, and then sort of perfecting that 30-second sort of script is all forward focused, because I know that people will eventually come around to asking me what I've done in the past. I don't need to lead with that. Yep. So I need to work on that.
All right. That's beautiful. And that's intention, that's discipline. And that really honestly is work. It is work, particularly if you're coming out of a situation that is, that has negative connotations to it. So thanks for sharing that, Jake. Here we are, we're at the top of our time. And I know that Laura is watching this because I went over the last time. So I want to be respectful of your time. I'm grateful that you've been here. And I just want to offer my support of your efforts and hope that you find the right opportunity with a forward-leaning organization and you have the chance to contribute to a particular place in time that I know that we will all be proud of playing a role in. So here's to you and your next opportunity and all the people that you get a chance to lead. Thank you very much for your time.
Wonderful, Laura. Thank you so much. I mean, that was great content presentation, everything, the delivery, it was wonderful. And I know you have so much more that you could have offered for another 30 minutes, but I appreciate you sticking to the 12, and this was great. And we have a recording of this. We will post it in the Mighty Network, and I'll share it with you, Laura, as well. And if you have any questions, you can follow up with Laura directly. We'll provide her contact information for that. And we'll see you next week on Tuesday, the 23rd for Larry Stibel, who's going to join us on his topic, how to tell a story that will make your candidacy stand out. So Laura, you might be interested in that.
I love stories.
Storytelling.
Yes,
very good. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Thank you.